Hello everyone and welcome back to a new video where I will be giving you some tips, or should I say helping you build your Genshin Impact character. Little disclaimer, I am in no means a professional or anything of the sort. I simply want to help beginners and free-to-play players understand a little bit how to build some characters. I'll try to make this as much easy as possible. You can even say I'll be explaining in Razor language. One more thing, this is preferably for people that just reached AR 45 or just wanting to understand more about 5-star artifacts, because to be honest, I only started understanding how to build when I reached that level, so I'm just gonna say that again. This is free to play, beginners friendly, so there's not gonna be much complex words or builds to understand and stuff. Anyways, I really hope you can get something out of this and that it will be a little bit helpful for your journeys. Let's begin. I'm gonna be starting off with the Traveler, in this case Ether, since he is my Traveler. For one, because he's a character that everyone has and that nobody pays attention to, sadly. For two, he is my main and my precious boy and I really want more recognition for him. First, I want to say that my Ether build is not the best one you can find, but it's definitely one that you can work with. Like, he is my main and I really love the way he is right now, even though I really need to improve some stuff. For the weapon, I'm using the prototype Rancor on him, which is a completely free to play weapon that you get in the beginning of the game when you reach AR 10 or 14. I don't quite remember, but yeah, you get it for free and it's a pretty good one. And also the aesthetics matches Ether's, so there is other options indeed, but as I mentioned, this is beginners free-to-play friendly, so I doubt you will be having that much weapons in your possession. So prototype Rancor is your to-go weapon, or if you're playing on PS, you can use the Sword of Dissension, which is sadly a PS exclusive weapon. Okay, forgot to mention that this is Anemo Ether since it's my favorite elements on him. The artifacts are going to be animal related, so 2-piece Viridescent and 2-piece Gladiator. I also built him as a DPS, as most of my characters, so that's why I'm not giving him the 4-piece Viridescent. Okay, so what does that mean? Simply, I want Ether to deal much damage and not support another character to deal that damage. For the artifact stats, the main one in the flower is always going to be HP, and the main one for the plume is always going to be attack. However, in the sand, the circlet and goblet are going to be different. So for the sand, you just have to go with attack. For the goblet, you have to give him an anemo damage bonus. In my case, I just got very unlucky with artifacts, so I'm giving him an attack one, which is a pretty good alternative if you do not get lucky with artifacts. And finally, this circlet is going to be whatever you need the most. For me, I needed crit damage, but if you need more crit rate, then you give him crit rate. In case you're wondering what is crit damage and crit rate, to put it simple, crit damage is the amount of damage that your character is going to be dealing. So the higher the crit damage is, the higher the number it's going to be. On the other hand, crit rate is the ratio of chances that your character is gonna be dealing that high number of damage. For example, Ether's crit ratio here is 169 crit damage and 41 crit rate, which is not the best ratio, but it's a good one. So Ether has 41.9% chance to hit that big number of damage, so the higher his crit damage will be, the higher that number will be. For the subsets, you have to prioritize crit damage and crit rate. It is not a bad thing to get attack, elemental mastery, or energy charge, but well, your priority should be crit damage and crit rate. Okay, so what is a good artifact? It's one that has the convenience main stats and 4 substats, including crit damage and crit rate. The other two could be attack, elemental mastery, energy recharge, but defense and HP are the less preferably ones. On the other hand, a very bad artifact could be considered one that doesn't have the convenience main stat and the substats are flat, for example 2 HPs, 2 attacks, and 2 defenses in the worst case scenario, and doesn't contain crit damage and crit rate. Moving on to the character constellations. So Traveler ones are easy and free to get from the shop, from the Statue of the 7, Adventurer's Rank, and they're all pretty useful, especially the last one, which removes 20% anemo res from the enemies, which means anemo resistance. And finally, we have the talents, who are pretty important for your build. You should at least get them to level 8. Okay, moving on to our next character, who is not a free-to-play friendly, but since I'm not a big spender on the game, I can give you a convenient build. Okay, so the weapon I'm using on him is the Favonius Lance, mostly because of the energy recharge and the aesthetics are quite matching with him, and that doesn't really matter. You know why? As I mentioned, he is definitely not a free-to-play friendly, so most of the 4-stars weapons do not work on him. The only 2 convenience 4-stars weapon for him are not free, since one is the Blackcliff Bowl that you get from the shop using Star Glitter, and the other is from the Battle Pass. If you're not in possession of one of the 5-stars weapons, especially his signature one, the Jade Spear, do not bother a lot with his weapon and just give him one of these, especially the most convenient ones that I've been using are the Crescent Pike and Favonius Lance. Okay, so I forgot to show his artifacts and talents, but they're basically just like Ether's, 2-piece Viridescent and 2-piece Gladiator, prioritizing crit damage and crit rate, and I also gave him an and Anemo Damage Goblet. For the talents, I triple crowned him. Okay, Kazuha actually have different kind of builds, but I won't be given much complicated ones. I will just give what I have. Since we're not speaking 5 stars, I gave him the Kagotsurube Ishin as his weapon. There's other options for different types of builds, but for this one, I gave him his Ishin Arts weapon. Well, personal taste. But any attack weapon would do the job. For the artifacts, same as Ether Inshao, 2-piece Verdicent, 2-piece Gladiator, prioritizing crit damage and crit rates, and the Anemo Goblet. I will be briefly mentioning another type of build that you can have on Kazuha since it is known to be good, which is Elemental Mastery Kazuha. Simply, you give Kazuha Elemental Mastery as main stats in the Sand, in the Goblet, and also Circlet. And instead of an attack weapon or crit weapon, you give him an Elemental Mastery one. For the constellations, C0 of course, and for the talents, at least level 8, mine is triple crowned. Moving on to Albedo, yet another character that I still haven't finished building, but is actually doing pretty well. Okay, luckily for me, I was there in his winter event, so I have his best weapon, the Cinnabar Spindle. Sadly, it is not available anymore, but there are other choices. The Amenoma Kaguchi is a pretty good one, but you can also give him this 3 stars weapon. And you might question, why defense weapon? Well, simply Albedo is also a defense-based character, which leads me next to the artifact set. Albedo has multiple choices, but the best one for now is the 4-piece Husk of Opulent Dreams, but you can also use the Archaeatic Petra. You can also use 2-piece Gladiator or Shimenawa with a 2-piece Archaeatic Petra or Husk of Opulent Dreams. For the main and substats, of course prioritizing crit damage and crit rate, but also attack and defense, with a geo damage bonus Goblet. As you can see, I also gave him a defense stand. That's because I want to build him defense more than attack. And if you're wondering about the difference between them, his elemental skill scales on defense, while his elemental burst scales on attack. And since I want my Albedo to be a support more than a DPS, I'm focusing on his elemental skill. Next, we have my dear Kuniskara Wonder, whatever you want to call him. He is one of my most used and invested on characters, and you'll see why shortly after. Ta-da! I have his signature weapon. And trust me, I did not spend a single penny on that. It was all my in-game savings. So, of course, his signature weapon is the best one, or you can use the Lost Prayers to the Secret Winds. For free-to-play options, you can use this one. Unlike the other Anemo characters, Scaramouche actually has his own artifact set, which is the best on him if you use the 4-piece set. If not, you can use the 2-piece Gladiator or Shimenawa and 2-piece Verdicent. For the main stats, Sand Attack, Anemo Goblet, and Crit Circlet, depending on whichever you need the most. Substats, crit damage, crit rate, attack. And for the talent, minimum level 8. Hazel is one of the most OP characters, even though he's just a 4 stars. He is so cracked and so fun to play with. As you can see, I was lucky enough to get the Lost Prayer to the Secret Wind and the standard banner, and it's his best option. Alternatives will be Scaramouche's weapon, the 4 stars crit damage one, and the 3 stars crit rate one. For the artifacts, just like Kazuha, Xiao, and Ether, 2-piece Verdicent and 2-piece Gladiator. Always prioritizing the crit damage, crit rate, and Anemo Goblet, which I never gave to him, sadly, since I got very unlucky, so I just threw the Elemental Mastery one since it had so much crit damage. Okay, so for constellations, since he's a 4 stars, it is better to get as much constellation as you can. I am still very salty about the fact that I couldn't C6 him. For talents, you know the deal by now, I triple crowned him. Kaya, one of the starter characters that is actually pretty good, not a lot of people use him sadly. I gave him the Harbinger of Dawn since I lacked so much crit damage and I really didn't have any other option. Depending on how you want to play your Kaya, you can give him the Prototype Rancor if you want him physical. The Favonius Sword is also another option for another type of build. The Amenoma Sword is also another option. So the artifact set that is known to be good for him is the 4-piece Blizzard Strayer. Of course, prioritizing crit damage, crit rate, and a Cryo Goblet. Okay, listen, there's this specific Kaya build that is kinda big brain, if you know what I mean. I just want to mention it because it's pretty smart if you think about it. It is a physical damage Kaya with a pyro damage Goblet, but it only works with C6 Bennett. You might be wondering, why would a pyro damage bonus Goblet work on Kaya, who is a cryo character? Well, simply since C6 Bennett, turn your physical damage into pyro 1 in addition of a 15% bonus. Anyways, do not listen to me, this is kind of a big brain move. I just wanted to mention it because it was pretty cool. It is well known that Kaya constellations are the hardest to get. I was pretty lucky to even get his C3, so if you can get more, that's perfect. Especially his C4, since at low HP it gives Kaya a shield. And the same thing for the talent, level 80 at least. And finally, I'm gonna conclude this by giving you a support Bennett build, since he is known to be a really great support. As you can see, the energy recharge is so high because this is the thing you need to focus on. So try to obtain as much as best possible energy recharge by giving him an energy recharge sword. It could be the Skyrider sword, the Favonius sword, or even the sacrificial one, even though I don't really recommend it much if you have other options, since its passive is pretty useless for Bennett. The set we're using for Bennett is the Noblest one. It is the perfect one for Bennett since it increases your elemental burst damage, and also at 4 piece it increases all your party members' attack. As you can see, I focused a lot on energy recharge, and I also gave him an ER sand. And why is it that important? Well, to spam his burst, so it can always be ready whenever you need it. I also gave him an attack circlet and goblet instead of a pyro damage bonus one and a crit one, since the support he gives to the other characters is also based on the amount of attack he has. All his constellations are pretty good too, but be aware of the 6th one, since as I mentioned before, it infuses your physical damage with pyro. So if you're playing with a physical character such as Eula, you do not need his C6. For the talents, just level them up and prioritize the burst. Before I end the video, I just want to mention where you can get weapons most of the time. Okay, so we all know the standard banner is a way to get weapons, even 5-star ones. You can get them from the shop using star glitters alongside constellations. Or you can get craftable ones from the blacksmith using some blueprints that you get along with time, or the ones that are already there. And that is all for this video. I really hope it was useful and you got something out of it. I just wanted to make something like that since when I was a lower AR, I was struggling a lot with builds and artifacts in general, so yeah, I learned everything by my own. So I hope this was a little bit helpful, and I'll see you guys in next videos.